Today, we're diving into an important topic, the intersection of mental health and substance abuse. We're going to talk about how these two issues often go hand in hand and why it's so important to understand the connection between them. You see, folks, it's like this. You can't treat one without addressing the other. It's like trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on it. We're going to break down 10 key aspects of this complex relationship, giving you the straight talk you need to understand the challenges and find the right path to healing. We're going to cut through the noise and get real about mental health and substance abuse. So buckle up and let's get started. When we talk about mental health and substance abuse, we got to talk about co-occurring disorders. This is when someone struggles with both a mental health disorder and a substance use disorder. It's a double whammy. Using substances to cope only makes things worse. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. Recognize and treat both conditions. Therapy, medication, support groups, the whole 9 yards. There's no shame in getting help. Let's talk about self-medication. Now, this is when someone uses drugs or alcohol to try and manage their mental health symptoms. They're not doing it to get high or party, they're doing it to feel better, to numb the pain, to escape the reality of what they're going through. And let me tell you something, guys, it's a dangerous game because while it might provide temporary relief, in the long run, it only digs that hole deeper. Substance abuse doesn't address the root cause of the problem, the underlying mental health issue. In fact, it often makes those symptoms worse. Imagine this. You're struggling with anxiety, and you start drinking heavily to calm your nerves. Sure, the alcohol might take the edge off initially, but over time it can actually increase your anxiety levels. It messes with your brain chemistry, disrupts your sleep, and leaves you feeling even more on edge. So it's a vicious cycle, a downward spiral. That's why it's so important to understand that self-medication is not a solution. It's a dangerous trap that can have serious consequences for your mental and physical health. Look, we can't talk about mental health and substance abuse without addressing the role of genetics. Now, this doesn't mean that if addiction runs in your family, you're destined to follow that path. It's not a life sentence. But it does mean that you might be more vulnerable, more susceptible to developing these disorders. Think of it like this. Imagine you have a family history of heart disease. Now, that doesn't mean you're guaranteed to have a heart attack, but it does mean you might need to be more mindful of your diet and exercise habits, right? It's the same thing with mental health and addiction. If you have a family history of these issues, you're not doomed, but you need to be aware of that predisposition. You need to understand the risks and be proactive about your mental health. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty, the science behind all of this. When we talk about mental health and substance abuse, we got to talk about brain chemistry. You see, our brains are complex organs, and they rely on a delicate balance of chemicals called neurotransmitters to function properly. These neurotransmitters, they're like messengers in the brain, sending signals that control our mood, our thoughts, our behaviors. Now, when we introduce substances like drugs or alcohol into the mix, it throws that whole system out of whack. Think of it like this. Imagine your brain is a finely tuned instrument, and substance abuse is like someone coming in and banging on the keys. It disrupts the harmony, creates chaos, and messes with the way your brain functions. Over time, substance abuse can actually change the structure of your brain, making it harder to experience pleasure, control impulses, and manage your emotions. It's like rewiring your brain circuitry for addiction. Trauma impacts mental health and substance abuse. Many struggle with deep wounds from painful experiences. Childhood trauma affects brain development. It disrupts emotions, attachments, and stress coping. These experiences increase the risk of disorders. Children in chaos learn to numb their pain. They might use substances to escape haunting memories. Trauma has a lasting impact, but there is hope with the right support. Healing from trauma and breaking addiction is possible. Let's talk about stigma, folks, because the stigma surrounding mental health and substance abuse is a real problem. It's like a silent epidemic, preventing people from getting the help they need. It's the shame, the judgment, the fear of being labeled as weak or flawed. And you know what? It's gotta stop, because stigma is deadly. It keeps people trapped in the shadows, afraid to reach out for help. It's time to break the silence, to start talking openly and honestly about mental health and addiction. We need to create a culture of compassion, of understanding, where people feel safe to come forward and ask for help without fear of judgment. Because seeking help is not a sign of weakness, friends, it's a sign of strength. It's a sign that you're ready to take control of your life and fight for your well-being. Now, when it comes to treating mental health and substance abuse, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about finding the right path to healing for each individual, and that often involves a combination of therapies, medications, and support systems. We're talking about therapy to address the underlying trauma, to learn healthy coping mechanisms, to develop strategies for managing cravings and triggers. We're talking about medication to help stabilize mood swings, reduce anxiety, and manage withdrawal symptoms. And we're talking about support systems because recovery is not a solo journey. It takes a village, a network of support from loved ones, therapists, and support groups. Let's talk about recovery because recovery from mental health and substance abuse is not a destination, it's a journey. It's a lifelong process of growth, of healing, of learning to manage your condition and live a fulfilling life. It's about ups and downs, about setbacks and triumphs. It's about learning from your mistakes, dusting yourself off and getting back on track. And it's about surrounding yourself with people who support you, who believe in you, who remind you of your strength. Now, let's talk about relapse, because relapse is a part of recovery. It's not a failure, it's not a sign that you're weak or that treatment didn't work. It's a bump in the road, a detour on your journey. And the key is to have a plan in place, to know how to get back on track if you stumble. It's about identifying your triggers, understanding the warning signs, and having a support system in place to help you through those tough times. Finally, let's discuss the importance of support systems. Because recovery from mental health and substance abuse is not a solo journey, folks. It takes a network of support from loved ones, therapists, support groups, and sponsors. It's about surrounding yourself with people who understand what you're going through, who can offer encouragement, accountability, and a listening ear. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe for more content on mental health and wellness. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. There are people who care, who understand, and who want to help. Reaching out for support is a sign of strength, not weakness. Take that step today, and let's break the stigma surrounding mental health and substance abuse together. You deserve to live a healthy, fulfilling life, and there are people here to help you every step of the way.